Have you ever imagined being reprimanded for an action that seemed harmless, such as making a joke? In Bethel, a group of youths tragically discovered the consequences of mocking a prophet of God. Today, we will delve into the account of Elisha, the successor of Elijah, and the supernatural event that revealed the power of reverence and the weight of the divine word. Imagine a journey that transcends the boundaries of the ordinary, shaping not just the destiny of one man, but of an entire nation. Moses, an emblematic figure in both history and religion, embodies one of the most extraordinary transformations ever recorded in the sacred scriptures. From an Egyptian prince raised among the riches and privileges of Pharaoh's court, to becoming a humble shepherd in the lands of Midian, and finally being called as a prophet and liberator of Israel, the life of Moses is a testament to the transformative power of God and how he prepares his chosen ones for missions of great importance. Moses was born in a time of profound adversity for his people, the Hebrews, who were enslaved in Egypt. Under a cruel decree from Pharaoh, which demanded the death of all newborn Hebrew males, the birth of Moses came with imminent danger. However, his early life was marked by a divine act of preservation and providence. Wrapped in a basket carefully prepared by his mother, Moses was placed in the waters of the Nile. Divine irony manifested when Pharaoh's daughter, moved by compassion, found and rescued the young Moses, choosing to raise him as her own son within the palace walls. This event was not just a miracle of survival. It was the beginning of Moses' preparation for a life of leadership and challenges, forging him in the traditions and education of Egypt while keeping his Hebrew roots alive through the presence of his biological mother as his wet nurse. Have you ever felt challenged to do something that seemed completely beyond your capabilities? Imagine then Moses, who from a humble shepherd became the leader charged with freeing the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. Today, we will walk together through this incredible story, observing how one man, with the help of God, can transform not just his life, but that of an entire nation. It all started when Moses, tending sheep in the desert, encountered a bush that burned without being consumed. From this fire, the voice of God called him. You can perhaps imagine Moses' surprise and fear. God had a plan to free his people, and Moses was the choice for this mission. How would you feel in his place? Despite hesitating, questioning his own ability to lead and even to speak in public, Moses accepted the challenge, trusting that he would not be alone on this journey. With his brother Aaron by his side, Moses faced Pharaoh not once but several times. Each refusal of Pharaoh to free the Israelites resulted in a devastating plague upon Egypt, from rivers turned to blood to the arrival of palpable darkness. Finally, the darkest of all plagues convinced Pharaoh to release Moses' people. Imagine the rush and relief mixed with fear as they fled, not knowing what to expect next. When it seemed there was no way out, with the Egyptian army approaching and the vast Red Sea in front, Moses stretched his hand over the waters. By a mighty act of God, the waters parted, opening a path through the middle of the sea. Think about walking on the seabed, with walls of water on both sides. It's the kind of thing you only believe by seeing, isn't it? The journey through the desert was anything but easy. Moses not only guided the Israelites through arid and inhospitable lands, but also mediated their conflicts and complaints. How would you handle the constant dissatisfaction and the incessant needs of such a large group? Moses, always turning to God for guidance, proved to be a patient and dedicated leader, providing not only physical direction but spiritual as well. At Mount Sinai, something extraordinary happened. God delivered the 10 Commandments to Moses, laws that would form the moral and spiritual foundation of a nation. This covenant between God and the Israelites, with Moses as the intermediary, was not just a legal agreement, it was a sacred commitment, shaping the identity and values of a chosen people. Imagine being called to lead thousands of people, not for a short trip, but for an epic journey through a relentless desert. Moses, once a prince of Egypt, found himself in this position when God called him to free the Israelites from slavery. His leadership was not based on military strength or political power, but on a deep trust in God and the ability to listen and follow divine instructions. When Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh with the message from God, "Let my people go," they were repeatedly rejected, which resulted in 10 devastating plagues on Egypt. Each plague challenged the Egyptian gods, showing that the God of Israel was supreme. Finally, after the 10th plague, Pharaoh gave in. The liberation was dramatic. The Israelites not only left Egypt, but also crossed the Red Sea on dry land, a miracle that forever closed the door to their slavery, as the waters returned and swallowed the Egyptian army that was pursuing them. Moses not only led his people out of Egypt, but through the vast and fearsome desert, miraculously providing them with food and water, and keeping them united and focused on the promise of a land that God had given them. At Mount Sinai, a crucial event happened that would define the identity and values of the Israelites as a nation under God. Moses climbed the mountain and they received the 10 Commandments directly from God. These commandments were more than rules. They were the foundations of a relationship between God and his people, encompassing worship, ethics, and mutual treatment. The 10 Commandments addressed everything from the exclusivity in worshiping God, "You shall have no other gods before me," to principles of social and personal justice, such as not killing and not coveting what belongs to others. They became the basis for all subsequent legislation that Moses established, guidelines that would guide the people not only in the desert, but in the land they were about to inherit. The law given to Moses by God on Sinai formed a covenant, a sacred alliance that meant the Israelites would be God's people, living according to his revealed will. This law was not just a set of rules, but a way of life that would define them as a nation separate from other nations, dedicated to the service of God. Have you ever stopped to think what it would be like to reach the end of life with all the energy and vigor of when you were young? Just imagine Moses, the great leader of the Israelites, died at the age of 120, and what is most impressive is that he maintained his vigor intact until the last of his days. But how can someone maintain so much energy and health, even after so many years? And even more intriguing, why does his burial place remain a mystery to this day? The life of Moses was marked by extraordinary challenges and stunning miracles. From facing the Pharaoh of Egypt to leading his people through the desert, he was always under the direct guidance of God. But his death? It is shrouded in a veil of mystery that still makes us question, what really happened to Moses at the end of his earthly journey? The Bible tells us that Moses was buried by God in a valley in Moab, but no one knows exactly where. This only adds more curiosity to his story. Why would the location of his burial be kept a secret? Could there be something so special about this act that needed to be hidden from the world's eyes? This secret about his burial raises several questions. Could the absence of a known tomb be to prevent the location from becoming a pilgrimage site? Or is it a message to us that the life of Moses, his legacy, is more important than the place where he was buried? Have you ever wondered how the actions of one person can reverberate through the centuries? In the case of Moses, his role transcended his own era, laying the foundation for an even greater event, the coming of Christ. But what exactly did Moses do that was so crucial for this divine plan? When we look at Moses, we see not just a leader who freed the Israelites. We see a spiritual architect whose life and laws laid the groundwork for Jesus' message. Moses introduced concepts of justice, mercy, and obedience to God, which are essential for understanding Christ's ministry. He not only led the people physically out of Egypt, but also spiritually, guiding them to a deeper and more committed relationship with God. But why was Moses' mission so essential? Why did God choose to prepare the way for his son in this manner? Think about it. Without the laws and the system of sacrifices that Moses established, which later would symbolize and be fulfilled by Christ, how would we understand redemption? How would we appreciate the depth of Jesus' sacrifice without knowing Moses' story? These laws and rituals were not merely rules or ceremonies. They were shadows of what was to come. and Christ would be the reality that would complete them. Moses showed us what it means to live under God's law, and Christ showed us what it means to live under God's grace. By doing so, he not only fulfilled Moses' laws but also transformed them, offering a new way to understand our relationship with the divine. Have you ever wondered why, in some stories, even after death, some characters continue to be the center of great battles? The story of Moses' body is one of those fascinating enigmas. Just imagine. Even after his death, Moses was in the middle of a celestial conflict. But why would Satan be so interested in Moses' body? What is there in a simple body that could attract so much attention? According to biblical accounts, there was a dispute between the Archangel Michael and Satan over the body of Moses. This fight is not just a curious detail, it offers us a deep insight into the spiritual forces that operate around us, even though we often do not perceive them. But what could be the reason behind Satan's interest? One theory is that Satan could want to use Moses' body for purposes of idolatry or profanation. Imagine the impact it would have on the people of Israel if suddenly the body of the great Moses was found and elevated to an object of worship. This would divert the focus from the spiritual lessons Moses taught, from the laws he established, and even from the worship of the one true God. Turning Moses into an idol would be a distortion of his true mission and a real victory for Satan. And there's even more to consider. In spiritual terms, this attempt by Satan to claim the body of Moses can be seen as an attempt to claim power or territory that God had already decided as sacred. It is a reminder that spiritual battles are frequent and real, often happening in dimensions we cannot see or fully understand. So how does this story affect you today? It serves as a powerful reminder that we must be vigilant about what we idolize. What do you elevate to a pedestal in your life? Is there something or someone that you are, perhaps unconsciously, placing in the spot that should be reserved only for God? This reflection on the dispute over Moses' body challenges us to examine our own lives, ensuring that our focus is on what is eternally true and sacred. Let's together ponder this and ensure that our battles, visible or not, are always aligned with divine truth and justice. After years of guiding the Israelites through the desert, facing challenge after challenge, Moses found himself facing a new problem: the lack of water. The people, as always, were impatient and complaining, increasing the pressure on Moses. It was then that God gave Moses a clear instruction: speak to the rock in front of the people's eyes, and it would give water. But, in a moment of intense frustration and pressure, Moses did not follow these instructions precisely. Can you feel the weight of Moses' frustration? Instead of just speaking to the rock, he struck it not once but twice with his staff. Although water gushed from the rock, Moses' act was seen as a failure to demonstrate God's holiness before the people. Why was this so serious? Because Moses, in that moment of anger, took control of the situation, acting on impulse instead of trusting and explicitly obeying God's instructions. The consequences of this act were severe and immediate. Moses was forbidden from entering the Promised Land, a destination he had dreamed of and worked for nearly his entire life. Imagine coming so close to your goal, only to lose it because of a moment of disobedience. How do you think Moses felt about this punishment? This incident is not just a story about Moses' failure, but also a valuable lesson on the importance of following directions and how our actions can have long-lasting effects, not only in our lives, but also in the lives of those around us. What can we learn from Moses' mistake? How can we apply patience and obedience in our own lives, especially in moments of great pressure? Reflecting on the incident at Meribah leads us to ponder our own ability to follow instructions and how we handle pressure when we are on the brink of achieving our goals. Visualize yourself on the summit of Mount Nebo, your eyes scanning a vast and stunning horizon. This is the exact spot where Moses, after a life of leadership and numerous challenges, saw the Promised Land for the first and last time. One can only imagine the feelings that flooded him as he beheld, but could not enter, the land for which he had fought so hard. In Hebrew, this land is known as Arts Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, or the land of Israel, a term loaded with promises and destiny. For Moses, this panorama represented more than just a geographic destination. It was the materialization of the divine promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. However, the question arises, why was Moses, after all he had done, prevented from entering it? The answer lies in a moment of humanity and error, the incident at Meribah. Instead of just speaking to the rock as the divine instruction stated, Moses struck it. This action, seemingly minor, carries profound theological implications. The Hebrew word for speak, diber, goes beyond the mere act of speaking. It implies manifesting the divine will. By striking the rock, Moses not only disobeyed, but failed to sanctify God before the people, highlighting the critical importance of obedience and trust in God's words. Moses' death is unique in biblical literature. He died peacefully at 120 years old, still vigorous, and was buried by God in an undisclosed location. The Hebrew word for bury, kavar, usually refers to a human act, but here, it indicates a divine intervention, elevating this event to a level of profound sanctity and mystery. Why would God personally choose to bury Moses? According to Jewish traditions, the secret burial of Moses was meant to prevent his tomb from becoming an object of idolatry or a pilgrimage site, reflecting the need to focus on divine messages, not the veneration of human figures. This divine act also symbolizes a recognition that despite the errors, Moses' life and service were accepted by God, with his role of leadership being fulfilled. Moreover, the tranquility of Moses' death contrasts with the tumultuous decades of leadership marked by incessant struggles. This final piece can be interpreted as a divine reward, a sign that in the end, his mission was successfully completed. Thus, as we reflect on these final moments of Moses' life, we are invited to ponder our own spiritual struggles and the deeper meaning of our journey of faith. What lessons can we take from the example of faith, obedience, and leadership of Moses? How can these teachings inspire and guide our own lives? Have you ever found yourself facing a task that seemed impossible? Or perhaps you've encountered a moment where you needed to lead, but felt completely inadequate for the task. These are common experiences, and it is exactly in these times that we can look to the life of Moses for inspiration and guidance. Moses did not begin his journey as a confident leader. In fact, when God called him, he was hesitant and full of doubts about his ability to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Have you ever felt this way? Doubting your own capabilities, perhaps thinking there's a mistake, that you're not the right person for the challenge facing you? The truth is, Moses, like many of us, had his fears. However, his story shows us that faith is not about the absence of doubt. It's about what we choose to do in the face of it. Moses chose to trust in God and move forward, despite his insecurities. This decision not only transformed him into one of the greatest leaders in the Bible, but also solidified his role as an example of true faith and obedience. In addition to his leadership, Moses' relationship with God is something deeply touching. The Bible tells us that Moses spoke with God face to face, as a man speaks with his friend. Exodus 33:11. Imagine that, such intimate and direct communication with the Creator. It's not something distant and formal, but a close, personal relationship. This type of relationship is something many of us long for. In our own lives, we face challenges that seem to overwhelm us, and sometimes we may feel that we are speaking into the void. But the story of Moses reminds us that communication with God is possible, and that He is closer than we can imagine. As we reflect on the life of Moses, I invite you to think about your own spiritual journey. How is your faith and your leadership, whether at home, at work, or in your community? Do you seek God with the confidence that He is listening and that, like a friend, He responds? Moses shows us that no matter how great the challenges or how unreachable our goals may seem, with faith and a close relationship with God, we can cross deserts and reach promised lands. His life is an invitation for each of us to reflect on how we can grow in our faith and how we can lead better guided by divine wisdom. So the next time you feel overwhelmed or insecure, remember Moses. Remember that, with faith and the help of God, even the humblest shepherd can become a leader capable of performing wonders. What lessons can you take from the life of this great leader and prophet to apply in your life today? As we reflect on the life of Moses and the lessons we can draw from it, we cannot ignore that. Just as he faced monumental challenges, we too face our own daily spiritual battles. Each of us struggles with doubts, temptations, and challenges that may seem insurmountable. But what does the life of Moses teach us about these battles? Moses shows us that we are not alone in our struggles. Just as he had direct support from God, speaking with him face to face, receiving guidance and reassurances, we also have an invaluable resource in our journey of faith, the ongoing presence of Jesus Christ. Now, I would like to make a personal invitation to you. If you feel like Moses in the desert, facing seemingly insurmountable difficulties, remember that salvation is within your reach. Jesus Christ, who came into the world not just to teach but to save, is ready to be your guide and your Savior. He offers not just temporary relief, but a complete transformation, a passage from a life marked by fear and uncertainty to a full existence of peace and purpose. Accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior is recognizing that you need help to face your spiritual battles, and that you desire a deeper and more meaningful relationship with God. It's understanding that, just as Moses was chosen to lead and liberate, you too are called to a life greater than you can imagine right now. So, I invite you to reflect on your own life. Where are you facing difficulties that seem too much for you? Where do you need liberation or a new direction? No matter how great the challenge, the solution begins with a step of faith. How about taking that step today? Talk to God, open your heart to Jesus, and allow Him to transform your life. Just as Moses climbed Mount Nebo and saw the promise from afar, you too can look to the future with hope and confidence, knowing that you are not alone. Remember, the journey of faith is not easy, but it is incredibly rewarding. May your path be marked by the courage of Moses and the assurance that, with Christ by your side, there is no desert too arid, nor sea too vast that cannot be crossed. If the story of Moses resonated with you, do not let this moment pass in vain. Share this video with someone who also needs inspiration and hope. Give a like if it spoke to your heart. Subscribe to the channel for more reflections that can light our paths, and activate the bell so you don't miss any moment of connection. Together we can turn our challenges into bridges to a more promising future. Thank you for being here with us. Your presence is essential. See you in the next video.